I'd now like to welcome to the stage Bernie Sheahan. I think everyone knows you as Bernie. I'd also like to invite our esteemed panel to the stage. If everyone could join us, it's over to you.
So welcome everybody to the first of these parallel sessions on cities and their role in this topic of green growth. Cities are an often underestimated actor in this particular space, which is quite unfortunate given the scope and the magnitude of the impact that they have and the importance that they play as economic actors. It's often overlooked that 2/3 of global GDP is produced in cities, and about the same amount of greenhouse gas emissions comes from cities. So these are really critical actors in this particular space, and they're actors whose importance has been growing dramatically over the last couple of decades, as urbanization continues to proceed, as we see here in India, as in many other places, and devolution of fiscal authority for investments in, among other things, infrastructure accompanies this as well. So cities, in looking at investment going forward and dealing with the kind of challenge that Lord Stern put forward in this morning's panel about ensuring that tomorrow's infrastructure is different than yesterday's infrastructure, face a number of key constraints, and one of them is obviously the financing one. And we will be talking quite a bit about this in the course of the session in this hour. And financing is quite a significant constraint, in particular here in India, where McKinsey has estimated that municipalities will need to spend in the neighborhood of $100 billion a year to deal with the issues that they have in front of them in the next decade. But the current levels of spending are less than 5% of that. So this is clearly a major issue. And as we have been discussing in the rest of this session, at the same time, technologies are changing in an important way and are offering both challenges and opportunities. Here in India, as in the rest of the emerging markets, the conversation around technology change and its impact on climate has been primarily in the energy space, of course, with the deservedly so, given the huge successes that we've been observing in terms of adopting, in particular, solar energy here in India. But a new set of technology changes is coming, much more now at the municipal level, in the area of transport. And here we already are beginning to see in India some of the early effects of this, with the arrival of transport as a service type companies like Uber and a number of its peers, the beginnings of policies around electric vehicles and the infrastructure that surrounds them, and early conversations around autonomous vehicles as well. A combination of technology changes that is likely to promise substantially reduced transport costs, but alongside with tremendous challenges in terms of planning and effects that we have yet to fully understand on other effects, on other parts of what cities do and municipal transport. So this is the set of topics that we look forward to exploring with our distinguished panel over the next hour. So I'm very pleased to welcome here our panelists. The first, starting to my immediate left, is Sharat Sharma of the Delhi Municipal Transport Corporation. I then have Dr. Madhava Kumar from the National Mission for Clean Ganga. Next to him, I have Dr. Krishan Kumar from Bhubaneswar, one of the leading cities, particularly in the smart city space. And then I have Rakesh Aggarwal from Eco Green Energy, who will be providing a private sector perspective to these set of issues. So I'd like to start by asking each of our panelists in turn, maybe starting immediately to my left here with Sharat Sharma, say a little bit about their organization and what's the big challenge that they see in terms of reaching their objective, in particular from a financial point of view. So Sharat, over to you.
Look, well, let me first introduce the organization Delhi Metro. Delhi Metro Rail Corporation is a 30,000 crore company after completion of phase 1 and 2. Today we are operating a network of 220 kilometers and carrying around 2.8 million passengers a day. We have 165 stations and we have deployed around 200 trains to carry this. Now, as far as the climate change or the emission of greenhouse gases is concerned, that let me tell you that right from beginning, Delhi Metro gave a lot of emphasis on the issues connected with the environment. And second obvious choice was because of the working expenses on energy of any transport sector like metro are quite high. We are around 1/3 of our working expenses are on energy. So we deployed all the equipment and during the design stage which were most energy efficient at that point of time. Then we took the lot of initiative from the top, the water management, the waste management, and on each of these topics we have a policy and an action plan and we follow that plan. Now coming to this is that with the policies, and we also have a department of environment which is headed by a general manager, and he basically collects the guideline, the legal requirement, the statutory requirement, and how one can really integrate it with the our day-to-day challenges. The second point which you asked is about the financing. So the Delhi Metro project is financed by equity participation from the center and the state. It is around 14% each. And then we go for the loans from JICA. 56% funds are flowing from JICA, and JICA terms with Delhi Metro, I would say, are quite reasonable with 10 years moratorium, 1.6% interest, and the currency fluctuations are hedged by the government. Now, in the operation stage, when you need to change a technology, because whatever technology we chose at that point of time was the most efficient at that point of time. Say when we are doing phase 1 into year 2000, the LEDs lights were not available, or if they were available, they were not that energy efficient, they were costly. So at that time, we went for the best technology available at that point, commercially available at that point of time was T5 and T8 lights. Now there is a time that technology has changed, we can save energy and we are going for LEDs lighting. So all new stations which we are building, we are going for IGBC rated platinum rating. All stations will have the solar, all stations will have LED lights, most energy efficient equipment. And the another part is that whatever we have already built, how to convert that into the new groove of the new technology and reducing your expenses. So we have chosen an ESCO model. Let anyone come, design, manufacture, erect, commission, and maintain those installations, and whatever energy saving we get, we pay them on monthly basis. We also took another initiative on solar. We have already commissioned 20 megawatt of solar power at our stations on the top of the buildings. No new building is coming up without solar power. So in every field, we are doing our best. I think biggest challenge is that we do not have any benchmark against which we can really compare ourselves. World over, DMRC is probably the only one organization in the transport sector which is aware about it, and right from beginning we have designed our systems like that. And second is, having done so much, we earn carbon credits every year. We have around 3 million carbon credits in our bank, but they are not sellable in the market. So on one hand, we are investing, we are giving a higher price. We provided regenerative braking right from our earlier rolling stock, where we get back around 40 to 45% of the energy back into our system. But that is at a cost. And while people appreciate our efforts, but we are not able to really convert it into the money, because CER's credits are not sellable in the market, and new technology comes at a higher cost. So I think these are the challenges.
Very, very interesting. We'll explore that a little bit more during the course of the session, but thank you for that introduction. Let me turn next to Madhava Kumar, and maybe again just introduce the National Mission for Clean Ganga a little bit, and talk about your sort of #1 challenge from a financing standpoint.
Thanks, Sheahan. And at the outset, I would like to thank International Finance Corporation for offering this opportunity to talk about our mission. National Mission for Clean Ganga was set up in 2011 as a project implementing agency under the arm of, at that point in time, it was with the Ministry of Environment, Forest, Government of India. Particularly, it was guided by, at that point in time, there was another agency which was called National Ganga River Basin Authority was present. This was set up with an aim of rejuvenating River Ganga. It had two main objectives. One is the pollution abatement, and then ensuring ecological flows or the continuity of the river. These are the main objectives which were originally thought of. Later on in 2016, this organization was converted into an authority under Environmental Protection Act of 1986. The whole setup has been changed. Now this rejuvenation program is monitored or maybe guided by a national council under the Prime Minister, under the chairmanship of the Honorable Prime Minister. NMCG continues to be the project implementation arm of that National Ganga Council. NMCG is supported by various state Ganga project management groups. Why am I saying it separately? Because there is another level of intervention available, which are called state Ganga committees, which are also constituted as authorities at the state level, and followed by district Ganga committees to support the entire program. This is how the organizational setup is right now. We basically deal with the pollution abatement in terms of wastewater treatment, because before I enter into what the quantum of wastewater coming up and how we are dealing, I would like to talk a little bit about the river Ganga. This is the longest river. It's having about 2,525 kilometers long. I'm talking only about the main stem of the Ganga. I'm not talking about the tributaries as such. If you include the tributaries, it will be much, much huge. The basin is about close to 1 million square kilometer, hosts about 40% of India's population, and 26% of India's land mass is covered by this basin. It's not only a river which supports the livelihood, but it's also highly revered for its cultural significance. We may know how important River Ganga is for any Indian. So this is how it is. The pollution in this river is basically through sewage, untreated raw sewage flowing into the river. About 70% of the pollution is coming from the sewage. And then we have about 20% of the pollution coming from industrial wastewater. About 10% of the pollution is coming from the non-point source of pollution, such as agricultural runoff, etc. This government, when in 2014 this NDA government came into power, they came up with a new program which is called Namami Gange. This program covers about, with the funding of about 20,000 crore. In Indian rupees, it would be about $3 billion US dollars scheme. which includes both ongoing commitments as well as new programs. When I say ongoing commitments, already there were efforts which were made in the past to rejuvenate this river. The Government of India came with 2 different programs. Somewhere in 1985, GAP 1 came, Ganga Action Program 1 came, and then in 1993 somewhere, GAP 2 came. Put together, GAP 1 and GAP 2, government has invested about 1,000 crore, about 150 million US dollars, and a capacity of about some 800 MLD, million liters per day treatment capacity were created. Then, with the support of World Bank, a project, National Ganga River Basin Project, was conceived somewhere around 2009, and it was about $1.5 billion project size with $1 billion support from the World Bank. So these are the ongoing commitments. So about 7,000 odd crore comes as ongoing commitments. And over and above that, Government of India offered about 12,000 odd crore as new funding for the creation of new treatment infrastructures. When we look at the pollution, there are about 352 towns situated in the main stem of the river Ganga. We generating about 7,000 odd million liters per day of sewage. We are now focusing on the main stem of the Ganga, so we are considering about 118 towns to be covered under this program. There are about 144 drains which are carrying untreated domestic sewage, and the number is too huge. It said that about close to 1,000 metric tons of BOD is getting discharged in the river through these drains, and about 14,000 metric tons of solid waste is getting generated in this basin. So this is the size which we are dealing with. Of course, whether this is sufficient, the investment of 20 crore is sufficient or not, that's the second question. But it is an effort, and it will be an ongoing effort. The challenge, the primary challenge what we face is that when the Ganga River Basin project came into existence, or maybe the GAP was operational, at that point in time, the operation and maintenance of the treatment capacities which are created were assigned to the state governments or the local municipal bodies. Unfortunately, they couldn't manage to operate and maintain those assets. And a study says that about 50% of those assets are almost non-functional and are not meeting the design standards or design water quality standards. Looking this or taking this into consideration, under Namami Gange program, government came with an idea that the entire 100% funding, not only the capital cost, but also the O&M cost, will also be funded by the Government of India through this Namami Gange program. Many ongoing projects under the original commitment, that is with a share from state government, are still continuing. That will still continue with the same under the same payment pattern. But this particular new set of projects will be undertaken through 100% funding. We have come up with an innovative mechanism which we will talk about a little later. It's called a hybrid annuity based PPP mode. That's how the mission is progressing. This is what I'd like to share at this juncture.
Well, thank you, Madhava. I think certainly a very distinctive program here in India that's been launched under the current government, and I think a good illustration that as we look at the changing role and challenges for cities and actors in this subnational space, it's not just new technologies that we see coming forward, but completely new business models, as in the case of the Clean Ganga program, which is really kind of breaking new ground relative to what we see anywhere else. So we'll explore that a little bit more, but right now let me turn to Krishan Kumar, Municipal Commissioner of Bhubaneswar, to tell us a little bit about another aspect, here the more smart cities aspect of some of these changes. So please, Krishan.
Municipal Corporation of Bhubaneswar, along with a couple of other agencies like Development Authority and Smart City Company, basically manages the whole municipal services, public transport, water, sanitation, and housing programs. In case we look at the Smart City Challenge, which was a national challenge which was done under the Smart City Mission, we led the team, and we were very happy to be judged as the winner of the National Smart City Challenge. And two of the key factors, I would say, which really helped to clinch the program was our focus on citizens as well as climate. We were very, very conscious of the fact from the beginning that smart cities are not about just deployment of some technological architecture, but they are also about people and sustainability in the long term in terms of managing our own climate resilience of the infrastructure that we are going to build, or to retrofit the infrastructure which is existing at present. If you look at the financing of the plan, just to give you an example, I think you rightly said that traditional sources of municipal finance in terms of taxes and charges are not going to be enough to manage and develop the infrastructure which is required for the cities to grow and compete with each other. If we look at the Smart City Plan of Bhubaneswar, it is for about $700 million. And out of that, only 30% is going to come from the grants of the state government, central government, or any other agency. The 70% of the plan is going to be financed from different sources, which we are trying to explore now. If I have to just list out the sources as per the plan, the primary, about 20 to 25% is coming through the public-private partnership. So we are not only dealing with the traditional models of public-private partnership, we are also improvising on the partnerships models to bring in the confidence of the investors and to look at the markets as to what kind of vendors are available in the space. Secondly, we are also looking at new models of financing through the regulatory space, what is being called as the development-based value capture financing. I would say Bhubaneswar was one of the first cities in India to come out with a clear-cut directions and policies on it. And we would be looking at about 15% of our whole plan to be financed through value capture financing. And third most important component which we are trying to do for financing our budget of $700 million is through partnerships. So in partnerships, we are looking for multilateral finance, we are looking for bilateral finance with the German government. We are also looking at what was being talked as the blended financing options, because about half of the plan is completely commercially viable out of the $700 million. So there definitely we could access the market borrowings as well as something like municipal bonds. Keeping that in mind, now coming back to the question which you asked, what are the challenges we see in days to come as we go on to finance our plan? We have already closed a couple of very important public-private partnership projects in the housing sector, in the affordable housing sector, slum development sector, LED project for the whole city, rooftop solar project for the whole city on PPP model. So three challenges, if I have to say. The first is a trust. People just do not have trust in the municipal finances. They don't have trust in our book of accounts. How do we improve upon that? How do we improve the accounting standards in the municipalities as such? How do you bring that transparency in the municipal accounting standards? I think that's very, very important for us to access anything beyond the taxes and charges. Second most important challenge is the regulatory part of it, because when I spoke about value capture financing, you need to bring in the new regulations for it. You need to bring in the whole set of new rules for it. So the challenges therein comes in twofold, you know. One is a political economy challenge of it, whether people are willing, the political leadership can be convinced to bring this kind of new charges. And I would say the second challenge is also there is no knowledge available which could be replicated immediately in India, though we have good examples from across the world, from other countries and cities. But it becomes sometimes very difficult to convince and get those approvals. And third challenge for all of us as we move forward on new models of municipal financing is going to be institutional. Do we have capacities? Does our organization understands the new challenges which are coming up? Or is it only being told by the top management? Has it permeated throughout the organization? Has the organization culture started getting reoriented towards the new paradigms of transparency and governance or not? I think these are the broad challenges which will come as we move forward for building our new cities.
Great, thanks. Thanks for that, Krishnan. Let me turn last here to Rakesh Aggarwal. So here we've heard from three representatives of public sector entities in this particular space. And in the waste to energy space, here EcoGreen has managed to carve a niche for itself from a commercial standpoint. So tell us a little bit about EcoGreen and how you see the sort of big #1 challenge from a financial perspective.
Good. Thank you very much, Bernie. EcoGreen Energy is basically a part of Hangzhou Xinjiang Group, China, which has a China Xinjiang Environment as its main company for waste management, primarily for waste to energy plants. China Xinjiang today owns 41 power plants in China, which are operating at an average load of about 900 megawatt and handling about 45,000 tons of waste per day. So this is the kind of a size of the business this company is in. This company is listed in Singapore Stock Exchange. It has its largest power plant of 37 megawatt capacity, and technologically, basically one of the very important part of this company is the technology. Technologically, this company is operating the best combustion technology for waste management. See, for waste management, basically one of the key factor is the combustion. I mean, how this waste is handled. And with respect to India, when we talk of technology of this China Xinjiang, it is in India today, it is almost mandatory to have a segregation of the waste, then only it is allowed to be combusted. Means as per the latest SWM rule 2016, the mixed waste which is there available today, I mean maybe for another few years to come, till we have a segregation kind of a system fully enforced, this mixed waste, if we are burning as it is, there is a likelihood of generation of poisonous gases. That's the reason that the Ministry of Environment has primarily banned burning of waste as it is and has mandated to segregate the waste before combustion. That segregation is primarily to RDF and compost. Now, China Xinjiang has that technology, and all its plants are basically with this kind of a technology. I mean, the other technology which is known as mass burning, which is not employed in China Xinjiang, here it is after segregation, RDF is used for combustion. Now, use of RDF for combustion basically helps in going for a combustion system which is very efficient and effective. And that is the reason that this company has used fluidized bed combustion as its technology, which is the best available technology for the combustion. And with that, the efficiency of the plant as well as the environmental norms are much better affected. And if I really tell you the kind of emissions what from these plants we have, I mean the comparison is like that in India we have a norms of particulate matters of 50, SPM as 50, but most of the plants of China Xinjiang are operating less than about 4 or 5 particulate matter, and further it is being worked out that how to reduce it to less than 1. company is very, very sensitive to the environmental emission norms. And because of that, what we feel that the kind of a technology, the kind of expertise what the company has, it is very, very compatible for doing business in India, which is the today's requirement in our country. Now, one of the main challenges in India with respect to, particularly when we say with respect to financing, the first question comes that what is the success story in India for waste to energy plant? Now, yes, if we really see, there are not many success story in India, and there are definitely various reasons for that. Now, it is very important to for me to really elaborate on some of those reasons, so to the audience, so that we can appreciate that how that particular factor today is no more a factor in India, where we say that there is no success story. Now, for no success story, one of the major reasons was that so far the way these projects were envisaged, there was no sustainable financial model for that particular project. The projects were conceived as a compost plant, not as a waste to energy plant. And the sale of compost, production of compost to that quality was not achievable. And that's the reason that most of the plants which were set up could not sustain for long, and they had to be shut down. Few of the plants which were started with respect to waste to energy, there were many challenges. Some of the major challenges was the technology. The technology for using the mixed waste was one of a key challenge, because with the mixed waste and the quality of the waste which is available in India, it was really very difficult to have a combustion with that kind of a waste, because most of the combustible matter was getting picked by the rag pickers from these wastes. So that was one of the main challenges. Second major challenge was the public awareness. There was a lot of public resistance wherever these plants were to be set up, and I think that factor still continues. That needs a lot about the public awareness, education, that now the technology has changed, the systems have changed. And what has really system has changed means that today the kind of a regulation which has come up after the notification of Waste Management Rule 2016, now all these things are well defined, which earlier were not. So with those kind of regulations now in place, now for any developer or any company to set up these plants, it becomes mandatory for achieving those norms. And then in particular, a watchdog like NGT being there, I think it is very, very important for any developer in India now to set up these plants, that anything can go wrong with respect to the emission levels. So these kind of education which is very necessary for the public, so that such resistances are not there. Then there is a third important part which is about the conventional technology with respect to collection of the waste. Now, collection of the waste, and even today, I think the most of the part of the country is being collected and transported in a same age-old technology conventional way. I think it is required to be more mechanized, and this whole process, when we say that the whole waste management system needs to be environment friendly, it has to be starting from the waste collection till the disposal. It is not only the waste to energy plant which is responsible for the environment. It is also the first part which is waste collection and transportation, which is plays also very important role for being environment friendly, and not only being environment friendly, but to ensure that the quality and quantity of waste which is required for these plants is ensured. Now, what has really changed in last few years? This was a story which, because of which India had this tag that there is no success story with respect to waste to energy plants. Now, in last 3 years, basically waste to energy plant are linked with 4 government departments, 4 ministries. Number 1 is the urban development, which is actually the key who owns the, controls the corporations. Second is the power ministry. Third is the environment ministry. And fourth is the fertilizer ministry. Now, in last 3 years, what has happened that all these 4 ministries actually, they have got synchronized, and new regulations have come up in India wherein well-defined policies and regulations are in place today. Because of that, the failure which was earlier there about earlier periods, definitely now will not, I mean, the chances are very little now to be a failure with respect to that. Because of these regulations, now all these plants are becoming well-defined projects. Well-defined project, when I say, there is a well-sustainable financial model. The regulation is very clear. Now, what are those regulations mainly? There are 4 regulations I will like to tell. With respect to Environment Ministry, there are very clear guidelines that up to 15 megawatt plants, these are exempt from environment clearance. That gives a big time saving for the plants. Solid Waste Management Rule 2016 very clearly defines what are the emission norms and what are the other systems to be followed. Then the most important is the Ministry of Power. Now, waste to energy plants primarily, the generation of power and sale of power is the major revenue source from these plants, which earlier was not there. Now, with Ministry of Power coming into picture, now there is a good tariff which is already defined. The ministry has mandated it now for the local electricity company to compulsorily buy all the power generated from such plants. These plants are like a must-run plants. It cannot be backed out. So and then the fertilizer ministry, wherein about 1500 rupees per tons of subsidy is being given for the fertilizer being produced from such plants. So there are number of such benefits, policies, notifications, which has made now for any developer to develop these plants in a good, sustainable manner. So because of these things now, what as a private sector, I'll say that this business of waste to energy today is perhaps one of the least risk business. Least risk business, when I say, I mean, basically in this whole game, your input is guaranteed, means your waste definitely is going to come. It is unlike a coal agreement or a oil agreement where somebody can not supply this. The second is your sale is guaranteed. Once you are technologically, the company is having a good technology. So whatever power is generated, your sale is guaranteed and your revenue is guaranteed. I don't think any business can have all the 3 guarantees where input is guaranteed, sale is guaranteed and revenue is guaranteed. With these kind of things, but the only challenge today is that the company who is going to develop these projects in India particularly, because where it is a mixed waste, not a segregated waste like many countries, there the technology is one of the most important part. So technologically, if a company can really provide a good system, environment friendly system, and the way today the things are moving in India is like an integrated project. When I say integrated project means that it is starting from collection till disposal. So once it is from collection till disposal, it becomes still more comfort to the developers to ensure the whole chain. And the fourth very important part in this is the revenue. See, ultimately, any business can only sustain if ultimately you are going to get paid for it. And getting paid for this is some of the, see, all these projects are basically are bidded projects. They are bid by corporation. And power sale is the major revenue source now. And power sale, when we talk, see, if a place like Delhi, where it is around, total power is around 8,000 megawatt or so, the whole generation which is going to come from waste may not be 100, 150 megawatt. So naturally, payment for 150 megawatt against 8,000 megawatt is not going to be any major issue. So if the revenue source is power, and definitely what I personally feel and I have seen in India, that getting paid from the power companies is much easier as compared to the corporation. So the payment is also secured. Now once the payment is secured, then I don't feel that this business now, the challenges which were there few years back, I think all those challenges now today to a great extent have got mitigated, and it can be a real good future for India, where under particularly Swachh Bharat mission, there is a big drive for these projects, and the things are moving in that direction very aggressively, and I'm sure that with the days to come, this business or this sector to contribute towards the climate change is going to be a very, very positive sector. Thank you.
Thank you, Rakesh. So we've seen four quite different types of infrastructure challenges that our panel has been addressing. Very interesting in the case of waste energy, which is something that actually very few governments and very few countries have been able to create a space in which the private sector can actually come and invest. So this is a relatively unusual success in this particular space that India has achieved in making this kind of business that you've just described as successful here. Let me explore one more theme here before we open it up with Sharat Sharma and Krishan Kumar about a new set of technologies, particularly around transport, that we're seeing starting to emerge in some parts of the world and beginning to come here to India, which I referred to earlier. Electric vehicles, very much part of the conversation here now in India, with some of the potential policies that being looked at in terms of phasing out combustion engines over the next couple of decades. The ride-sharing services that have come here and that are have developed a whole range of business models around different asset utilization of cars, and what you're just starting to see emerge, the whole autonomous vehicle approach, with Tesla having shown off just 2 weeks ago its driverless truck for the first time. It's a very interesting set of developments there, that where you get a huge range of opinions of how this will affect cities and how this will affect public transport in particular. So it would be great to hear from the two of you how you see this set of things coming together and affecting public transport, the metro on the one hand, and just the mobility challenges of a city on the other. So maybe, Sharat, we could start with you on that.
Okay, First of all, the metro is a electric vehicle. Now, I think what you are talking about is the road transportation and the connectivity end to end or the last mile connectivity. By statute, the road transport is under the aegis of the State Transport Authority. Now, while from the environment point of view or from the commuter point of view, the last mile connectivity is a very important issue, and the technology with regard to electric vehicles is most welcome in the cities like Delhi. Having said that, the issue today is that last mile connectivity, can this be a sustainable model? It can be a sustainable model if the capital cost is either lower or it can be passed on to the commuters, whether commuters are able to really pay that cost or they are ready to pay that cost. I had a talk with the top-notch people from the Volvo and Toyota both, and we are interested to introduce 500 to 1,000 buses in Delhi. But none of the companies are really having a definite model to proceed towards the introduction of electric vehicles in India or in particular in Delhi. The two is that the lot of companies like Mahindra, they are also Tatas, they are also trying to manufacture electric vehicle, but the cost is very exorbitantly high. And one of the reason is, I think, the most desirable battery in today with the today technology is a lithium ion battery, which needs is required to be imported, and that governs the price of the electric vehicle. The batteries are not, India at the moment are not producing, though we are producing the lithium, but it is needs to be really finished to the requirement of these batteries, and it is around a 30,000 crore investment is required in India. So it has to be driven from a policy perspective that whether India is going to manufacture these vehicles, whether we are going or any big company is likely to manufacture these vehicles, whether these batteries will be produced in India, whether there will be some subsidies available. Because if you are not able to pass on this cost to the commuter, then the only way of sustaining this business is through the subsidy. And otherwise, it is as such, the last mile connectivity is a loss-making venture. Even with the combustion engine today, it is a loss-making venture because of the comparative tariffs or the expectation of the public that the fare structure should be very, very low. So either it has to be provided through subsidy, or if you want to have a self-sustaining model, then the cost is to be passed on not only for these vehicles but also with the other complementary modes of transport. As I said that it is basically by statute, it is a state responsibility, transport department. But on the request of them, at one point of time, DMRC is today running around 291 feeder bus services, but their performance leaves much to be desired. There are many buses, their maintenance is a big major issue, and the fares are low, and it's becoming almost a non-sustainable model. Recently, we also launched around a scheme of e-rickshaws. Incidentally, in e-rickshaws in Delhi, by statute, is banned. But whatever you see on the road is an unorganized sector. And we launched around 1,500 e-rickshaws in NCR, of which around 350 are operative today. and they are state-of-art technology with commensurating benefits. But again, fare is an issue. We are open to this. In fact, DMRC is thinking of launching or starting another company for last mile connectivity. Our board has cleared that. We are awaiting the approval from the government, but the issue which we are connected with it, how to sustain that model, how, whether it will be a subsidized model, whether, and that will only bring, that will decide the future of electric vehicles at what cost they are launched in India.
Great. Thank you.
If we look at the three issues which you flagged off, I would say at the level of city mobility planning, we definitely are going to have a future where you look at the multimodality of the whole planning and you try and shift the model share from use of personal vehicles to use of public vehicles or pooled vehicles. So three issues which you flagged off. One is the electric vehicles and shared economy platforms in terms of Uberization of the whole public transport system, private transport system, like cars, and third is autonomous vehicles. I would say the trend is that electric vehicles and shared economy platforms are the two things which will come first in India, and where signs are already there. For instance, in case of Bhubaneswar now, we are working with IFC to formulate an electric vehicle policy for the city, which should take care of incentivizing not only public transport but also the private transport in terms of ownership of electric vehicles within the city. Secondly, I would say in terms of even shared economy, until unless we figure it out that how we are going to account for shared platforms like Uber and Olas of the world in terms of not only cars but in terms of autos now which is coming in, we are not going to have a very sound plan. And it really serves a lot of public policy goals. For instance, the parking requirements come down. For instance, the requirement of improvement or widening of infrastructure and the roads come down in case you are going for a shared mobility. Third, autonomous vehicles, I think it's going to take time, and it looks a little difficult as of now for, it looks like a leap of imagination for a city at the level of city to think about that right now, but I'm sure in a decade's time that should also become a reality. And that will have huge implications on the whole city as such. It's going to disrupt completely livelihoods. If you look at auto rickshaws today, even in a small city like Bhubaneswar, you have 30,000 people who are subsisting on auto rickshaws. Now, if you are going to have a plan to roll out electric vehicles in that space, you are looking at disruption of livelihoods. Now, how do you account for when you are planning for such kind of a change is going to be the biggest challenge. Secondly, also financing will always remain an issue. And until unless we come out with newer models of financing for these infrastructures in terms of people, because the experience has been wherever you have provided better connected public transport in the cities, the real estate prices have come up. Now, how do you capture a part of that to finance your own public transport infrastructure is going to be one biggest challenge in days to come for all the cities.
I think a few key themes there in particular to underline, and thank you for those comments. I think one is around the pace of change. As you commented, so these are not immediate challenges for India, but likely to be soon in a number of cities. And here, I think we can look at what happened and how quickly change happened in the case of solar power generation, and that was really has been driven more than anything by the economics and the changing annual costs of that technology, and we're seeing the exact same pattern now taking place in electric vehicles, for example. But certainly the potential disruption to livelihoods and the need to reconfigure around that technology that you signaled is, I think, going to be very much part of the challenge for cities going forward. Let me open it up here and just see if we have questions from the audience for our panelists on this range of different issues that we hit. There's a hand in the back. If we could get a microphone to the gentleman in the blue shirt there. And please just say your name. Be great if the questions were short, and just tell us if it's for the panel in general or one specific panelist. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm Abhijit Banerjee from the UN, New Delhi office. I have two questions. A quick question on the waste to energy plan. You mentioned several positive improvements, but one of the factors that has also been a problem has been the tariff rate of at what rate you're selling the power. And some of the firms are struggling with their cost, especially their cost of separation of the waste is such that the tariff they're getting is not enough to make their plants viable. So that's one question. And the other question was related to urban planning. We have been talking about smart cities and autonomous vehicles and very futuristic technologies. Well, while if you look at the ground today in most Indian cities, I know parts of Bhubaneswar is perhaps a little better, or Chandigarh, for example, a little better. But if you look at most Indian cities, and Delhi is a good example, there are no sidewalks. And if there are sidewalks, they are occupied by, whatever you can imagine. So if you think of in terms of climate-friendly transport, pedestrianization and cycling, I mean, if my office is 200 meters from the metro stop, I will not walk. So unless we have, as a society, we have decided that we don't do rule of law. So unless we have traffic planning, parking planning, street cleaning and whatnot, this futuristic, I think of this as a first step. So unless we do the first steps, how can we think of smart cities and electronics and autonomous vehicles and so on?
Maybe, Rakesh, you want to touch on that? So.
Now, to start with your first point about the segregation, as the latest SWM rule 2016 very clearly mandates that the segregation at source is going to be mandatory. However, we all understand that this is definitely going to take some time. And that's the reason the notification also states that any combustion, particularly for waste to energy power generation, any combustion has to be only with RDF. When we say it is RDF, means the mixed waste which is coming from the source needs to be segregated. It needs to be segregated in two parts. One is compost and second is the combustible, which is called RDF. Now, with this notification being very, very clear today, the next point comes that do we have the technology to do that? Because until unless we do that, definitely any plant coming up using the mass burning technology or where even the wet waste is being combusted, definitely all NGOs and emission norms cannot be met and there is going to be a problem. Yes, I will say that in the today's time, we have good technology available, which is going to make this mixed waste into two parts, that is compost and RDF. And once this technology is employed in any of the power plants, we will be meeting the notified law of the country and as well as meet all the emission levels. So that is with respect to segregation. Second, with respect to tariff. Now the tariff, when the first time, because in India it is a power generation is a regulated business and the tariff is primarily controlled by the Regulatory Commission. So the Central Electricity Regulatory Commission, the first time when this petition was filed with them, they had come out with a tariff of 7 rupees 90 paisa. And I think, if as a private developer, if you ask me from our company perspective, we feel that this tariff is, I think, good enough to have a sustainable business in this sector.
Good, thank you, Rakesh. I think on the second question, I think we're going to agree. These are good comments about the issues, because I do note that lunch is being served. So with that, I think we'll say thank you to our distinguished panel for giving us a sense of the range of issues that are being faced by cities here across different types of infrastructure. So please join me in thanking our panel and turning it over here.
Thank you so much, Bernie. And a big thank you to all our esteemed panelists.
Right.
Please.